It's a pleasure to be here today with you in Amsterdam. And I think before we go into the speech and the talk, I want to try to set the stage. So, how many in here know ontology? Okay, almost everyone. Perfect. How many hold ontology? Okay, looked into the GitHub. Okay, cool. Yes, so let me try to set the stage about ontology and also a bit about how it's working with NEO. So ontology is a project, a technology project founded by OnChain. And OnChain is also the same company where NEO sprung off. And it's very important to understand that NEO and ontology is not the same. It's two different technology projects and they're treated as separately. So the history behind ontology is that OnChain, they did an identity project with a local government in a Chinese city called Guiyang. And while they were trying to put identity on the blockchain, they realized that the power of having identities and trust on a blockchain. So that's how ontology started off. Okay, so today we will briefly talk about the technology and the architecture of ontology. Then we will talk about the trust ecosystem, and finally we will see how we can apply ontology to some scenarios. And I would need a clicker to proceed. Okay. Yes, so what is ontology? Ontology is public blockchains with a new architecture. And it's very important to see that we say blockchains. It's not a single chain, it's several chains. It's high-performance chains, high-performance blockchains, which is able to handle high amounts of transactions per second. Ontology is also a public platform for building a distributed trust ecosystem, and we will talk a bit about that later on. So again, ontology, trust ecosystem, NEO, smart economy, and we went a bit about this discussion during a recent event I attended in Toronto, a NEO meetup. And I think that the way we tried to explain ontology, also how it sometimes touched the NEO system, is that ontology, you can see it as kind of the umbrella which go out and allow blockchains to communicate with each other and kind of being the glue between these different blockchains. Okay, so public blockchains with a new architecture. Let's take a step back and look at some of the challenges and successes that we have seen with the current blockchains. So obviously they gained a lot of attention. They had huge adoption. People, they started to raise money with ICOs and they started to build decentralized applications. But we also saw that these huge amounts of transactions per second, they clogged up the network. I guess that the crypto kittens is a very good example of that. And also, while doing these decentralized applications, they came up some problems when you really try to do some low-level customizations on a single chain. So that's some of the challenges that we try to tackle with ontology. If we look at kind of the architecture, at ontology we provide the low-level foundational architecture and some modules and protocols. We do not try to solve a specific business problem. That's why we try to invite communities and industry partners to come in and develop on top of what we provide. And if we look at the low level, we see the change. So it's a cross-chain project where we have multiple chains, and each chain could represent a different industry, a community, entity, a governmental entity, and they can be built with different customizations, different consensus mechanisms, and still yet they will be able to communicate because we provide some modules and protocols for that. For instance, to do the data transfer or the identity verification across chains. So again, we don't try to solve a specific business problem, but we do still propose some applicable scenarios, and initially also do that to inspire how to build on top of it. And we'll get back to these scenarios later. In the first phase of ontology, we will provide some framework where you can build your own chain with that, but we will also provide some common chains. And on these common chains, you can build your D-apps and you can deploy and invoke smart contracts. We will also provide some modules and protocols for data transfer and identity verification, and along with that, a few applications. So these applications would, for instance, be the Onto, which is an identity verification application. Okay, second part is the distributed trust ecosystem. And again, let's try to go a step back and talk a bit about trust. So at Ontology, we define trust with 3 dimensions. We have trust in technology, trust in the legal system, and trust in communities. So first we have the trust in technology. We've seen how we are starting to trust, or we do trust digital signatures and biometrics and so on. And recently we started to also build trust and confidence in blockchain. We've seen how Bitcoin have kept this immutable ledger distributed. You can download it, track the single sequence of events all the way down to the Genesis block, and nobody has been able to tamper with it so far. So we've been starting really to build some confidence, and blockchain is starting to get more legit in the environments. Then we also have trust in the legal system. So that's, for instance, the government. We trust them to keep track of our land register and our house and our cars. We rely heavily on the legal support and the legal documents. And last we have the trust in communities. So today I guess it's mostly relevant to talk about the online communities, like the new community, but it could also be communities online where we do ranking. For instance, you have a lot of sites which rank merchants and online retailers, and based on the peer reviews and the ratings, they will either gain or probably lose some sales based on that. So these 3 dimensions, they make up our current trust network, but we still do see some issues in this one. The information and the sources, they are very fragmented, and often you'll see some asymmetry between these, and it also kind of fosters a pure reputation system. So we see a need at Ontology to solve this by building a true, complete ecosystem where we take all these sources and fragment it in the industry and bring them in together to a single platform and network. The vision of Ontology is that we want to be the connector and the provider of this foundational infrastructure, and also provide the modules and protocols that we talked about. And then we want to invite the best teams from the industries to come in and build their applications and solve the problems on top of Ontology. We still believe that this is a very important part to bring in these traditional industries, because first at that time we will really build a real-world connection. So let's try to explore some of the applicable scenarios. I brought 3 today, but we don't restrain ourselves to these. It's just some examples. The first one is a multi-source identity system for people. So we suggest that when you want to prove yourself, you can do it through the blockchain network. And you can reach out to multiple sources to really prove your full identity, and you can build your own comprehensive profile on selected multiple sources. Because what you do these days is that you often prove your identity with governmental papers, could be your passport, along with maybe your utility bills or some financial documents from your bank. And one way you could use this could be when you go to a job interview. So you want to prove yourself, who you are, with your legal documents, and you also want to prove yourself with your previous professional experience. And it could be the same case when you go to the bank to apply for financial services. You really want to prove yourself, not only based on one source, but multiple sources to prove your comprehensive profile. Second example is distributed data exchange. So this is much about how we transfer data across chains. So big data has become very valuable. We use it to train algorithms, we used it for artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and you see how Facebook is doing these days. It's quite a sensitive topic. So at Ontology, we want to enable data to be exchanged through the... Okay, let me just try to reformulate that. We want the chains to be able to exchange data. But what we are doing on Ontology is that they can calculate the hash and they can upload that to the chain. And then based on that transaction and agreement they make across the chain or on a particular chain, they can do the data transfer of the chain. So the last scenario is for financial services. So in this particular example, we have a small medium enterprise or a small business owner who wants to go to the bank and apply for some financial services, a loan. And the thing is, when they do this these days, it's quite expensive for them, and the loan they get will often reflect a high interest rate based on some due diligence and risk control that the bank has to do. So we suggest that you can switch the role, and now as a small business owner, you can go into the bank and you can prove yourself. You can source all the information that they need to do the risk control, and in the end that will reflect lower cost for the bank and yourself, and provide a more fair interest rate. So that's really also some of the values that we want to try to bring to the industry, that we can automate processes, we can make them more streamlined, and in the end we can manage the cost and save cost. So final note on compliance. Since we have multiple chains, we can do low-level customization on each chain. We can build them with their own consensus mechanisms, and that's really allow us to build a real-world connection, because now we can tell the government or the bank, you can build it as you please, and you can still communicate across with each other. That's all for me. Thank you very much, and please go check out our website, our white papers, and our team.